Hey everyone, James here from TDB, continuing my series here on Xiaguan yearbook teas, another tea from Tim. Thank you, Tim, very much for sending me these. These are fun to try. And this one is the 2003 Xiaguan quality stamp. Had both the grade A and the grade B blue marks, and last but not least, we'll be having the Hongyan at the end. So this is one I've had definitely a few different times. I've had this from notably pretty dry Shenzhen storage. Shenzhen, for those not familiar, just outside of Hong Kong. So very much kind of that southern Chinese climate going on. And this is one of those that I think you'll see a little bit more prominently mentioned than a few of the other ones on the list. I think this one and this one might be the one that's like you'll see references to the most, and you will also see it called an 8653. So I'm curious to both think about this tea in the context of comparing it versus grade A and grade B blue mark, which I had last week, but also with 8653. Notably, those teas, the grade A and the grade B blue mark, didn't have what I kind of consider kind of that very classic Xiaguan 8653 taste of like menthol and pine and this kind of very interesting sweetness. And already I've only had one steep of this, smelling the leaves. This kind of reminds me a bit more of those teas too. It still definitely is a very, very woody taste, kind of like pine wood barbecue. But yeah, I'm curious to get into it. And one reason why you kind of have to be flexible when brewing these teas, you can't use the exact same parameters, especially when you're dealing with samples too, is because when I'm actually using these teas, you'll find that one is a little bit more broken up than the other, which is totally normal and fine. And you have to brew accordingly, or maybe you have half a gram less of one, which when you're talking about 5 grams or so, that's 10%. That's a big amount of tea difference. So you have to be flexible when brewing these teas, and no one's going to be perfect on these, but there's a reason to sometimes lean a little bit harder. For instance, on this tea, have a little bit less tea than the other one, so I'm going to still use my clay pot, but probably just brew a little bit longer and try to compensate for it that way. So getting a nice dark, more medium red color here on the second brew here. So cheers. Yeah, I mean, this really, I don't know. I did not have this in my notes the first time, but this one really tastes like 8653 to me. It has kind of it's still pretty sharp, so in that sense, it's closer to the grade A than the grade B. It's not like fully softened out, and it still has a lot of that kind of like barbecue-y, and you can tell this tea probably had a fair bit of smoke early on in its lifetime. At this point, I think it's, fairly approachable. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say grade B right now is probably the most ready to drink of these teas. This one feels like it is in the middle of turning the corner. It has a lot of that like really nice menthol pine sweetness that I get from like the 8653, which makes that tea, while it's only 17 years or 16 years old, 17 years old, Jesus, a very drinkable but strong brew, as is Xiaguan. Xiaguan is not a tea that you're going to just sit at and forget about it, the leaves in the pot, and have a really pleasant brew. It's a tea that you should always be treading carefully, at least with this kind of age range that we're exploring right here. The tea is strong, and it's intended to be strong, and you don't want to overdo it. So yeah. So far, leaving a nice sweetness. So even though it kind of has that sharpness and a fairly strong bitterness up front, it does kind of transform in a pleasant way. Kind of coats the back of the mouth and well. I would say this does represent kind of an interesting cross-section, at least on the first couple brews of the blue marks, as well as kind of a more classical 8653 taste. And I am a fan of the 8653. Definitely maybe the only Xiaguan recipe that I follow closely. I'm not quite as much of a Xiaohua fan as Denny is in the Ripe catalog. Yeah, this one also has a pretty strong aroma too for an HT. I do think this is the sort of HT that Denny would particularly like as well. So yeah, going pretty good here. I want to let this cool down for just a second. So let me know if you have tried any of these teas. We have grade A, grade B blue marks, quality stamp, the artistic fonts. I forget what that wrapper looks like, and the red mark. And the red mark looks a little bit different because it's a red mark, the Hongyan. So yeah, if you have tried any of those, I'll be curious. I think a couple of these have kind of done the rounds. They also have a later series on these that is much, much less expensive than these earlier sets that I think is around the 2009 range. They may have done it a couple of years more recently. And I have a few cakes, I think, of the artistic font there, which is pretty solid. Those later Xiaguans, you can tell that there's certainly a quality difference. It's like something like that will give a couple tasty brews and then really fall off. I think the endurance and the longevity of the leaves of something in this series is clearly a fair bit better. Anyways, cheers. It just so classically Xiaguan, just pine, barbecue. This brew is taking me a little bit further away from kind of that menthol 8653 taste and a little bit closer to its cousins from the same series. Good thickness on this too. Just a very sturdy tea. Yeah, Xiaguan, I mean, they make very sturdy teas. Yeah, so just a very, very robust taste to this. I would say, man, all these teas are very close together in quality by my estimation. So I would say this one probably is not quite as ready as the grade B blue mark, but also has better material. I like the punchiness of this and the body of it and the way that the bitterness evolves. So this is maybe a 6.62. So tied with the grade B blue mark. I think in the long run, this will probably be the better tea than that one. But as of now, you're kind of grading drinkability versus just kind of potential and stuff like that. I think this is totally in a drinkable state now. You just have to really like your tea pretty strong. I think most Westerners that are into raw pu'erh have conditioned themselves to at least like stuff that's here. It's not like most Westerners are sipping just 30-plus-year-old raw pu'erh exclusively. If that's you, then maybe this tea is not for you. But I think if you are the other 99.9% of the Western pu'erh audience, I think this is a quality thing to look out for. I mean, I'm not sure where you would identify this. Maybe a place like King Tea Mall or just hunting the webs of Taobao or Taiwanese auction, you're going to find stuff like this. I think these teas are worth checking out for sure. And if you can get a split going of, 7 or 8 people, then all of a sudden a $1 cake is not that bad. I mean, it's still, this is like 4.5 grams, so you're spending, $5 for the session. Really not that bad at all. And for something as enjoyable as this and something that can provide kind of a good reference point for early Xiaguan, I think it's well worth it. So going to continue drinking this tea throughout the day. Thank you again, Tim. And this is 6.6 rating. I will see y'all next time.